Jim in Canada.
Hi, Jim.
You're live with Eric and V. Hey.
Yeah, hi, Eric. Hi, V. First of all,
Hey.
congratulations on the elections. Congratulations to Mrs. Belk for having her, for being with child. And, just how are you guys?
We're doing really good.
We are doing well.
Yeah. You sound very, very familiar.
Have we talked with you before, Jim?
I think so. I'm sorry. I call so many shows, I sometimes forget which ones I call, but it could be that we've talked.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I had a question.
Yeah, what did you want to talk about?
No, go ahead. You want
no, I was. We're all being very nice today. That's fun. No, I was hopping in so I can ask you. What did you want to talk about today?
Okay. So yeah, I had a question. What I'm saying is, as atheists or I guess agnostic or whatever you want to call it, how can you know that God isn't actively deceiving you to lack belief in God?
Well, that takes us right back to Descartes, doesn't it? Except
the demon.
Yeah, Descartes called it a demon.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of, because I mean, are you saying that you can know that that's not the case?
No, so I think you're approaching knowledge in a very binary way that I kind of want to dissect, and I think that might help. Okay. when you know something, you're talking about your thoughts on those things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have an exact bead on truth. We approach things with degrees of confidence, and so do I have a high degree of confidence in the things that I accept to be true? I hope so. I want that to be the case, and so that's kind of how I approach it.
What I don't seem as clear is because in a scenario where God actively deceives you, any kind of confidence is consistent with deception. So it would be completely irrelevant what confidence level is if there is a scenario in which God is deceiving you, since that is conceding global skepticism, right?
Well, here's the thing: is what you've presented is a really, really nice little bubble. And you can represent that in an internally consistent way. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume you and I have a 10-hour conversation and we flesh it out entirely. I'm going to assume, Jim, that you are internally consistent in this view, right? There are plenty of views that can be internally consistent. The one that we usually go to is hard solipsism, right? The idea, are we in the matrix, or are we all brains in jars, or are you just a figment of my imagination? Those kinds of things. So what we want to do is we want to see if that model is consistent with the reality that we see. And
No, but Eric, the problem doesn't come in there. The problem comes in this scenario, in this, I guess, Cartesian scenario, right? Any kind of you perceiving is consistent with you being deceived. So,
Jim, I agreed.
If you concede global skepticism, any kind of probability statements are completely meaningless because.
What is global skepticism, and where have we conceded that?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with that as well.
Well, you've conceded that you have no way to know that God is actively deceiving you, and that's concession of global skepticism.
You said that twice now. Define global skepticism.
Well, it's basically the view that you can't actually know anything except the fact that there are scenarios in which you can't know anything.
That does sound like skepticism. I like that.
It almost sounds like something an inner circle atheist might.
Does it?
Might buy into.
What I think happens in that is, I have no problem if you, for example, are a global skeptic, but I just don't see how you can have any knowledge claims like probability or skepticism. Well, conceding global skepticism means you can't know anything, except the fact that you can't know anything.
Jim, I'm happy to respond to that. Skepticism is a tool, but that's not the only tool that we have. I want to try and apply skepticism as much as possible because I want to challenge what I believe. I want to challenge why I'm accepting something as true and that I'm not just taking it on faith. I'm not using bad logic to get to things. And so while skepticism is a tool, it's not the only one. We also use different things. We use pragmatism, although we want to limit those as much as possible. What are some other views and world?
Well,
Let's
here's
see.
the thing.
There's-
I'm not convinced by this argument in the slightest, at least not in terms of where I think you want to be going with it.
What I'm saying is what I'm saying is I don't see how you can espouse global skepticism and also have any knowledge claims like probability or any kind of tools, because global skepticism by definition.
Because we're using knowledge in different ways here. We're equivocating your definition of knowledge and our definition of knowledge.
What's your definition of knowledge?
I think that knowledge is subjective. I think that you can say you know something and you will believe you know it, and I can say I know something based on the evidence that I've perceived, and I can believe I know it, but they might not require the same kind of evidence. So for me, knowledge is a spectrum, right? And we get to a certain degree of confidence, and then we say, colloquially, I know this thing. I know that Eric is sitting next to me because I can experience that, and it would be really weird if he was some kind of mirage or something. Like I can poke him.
So, V, are you saying that someone can know something that is false?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but that's actually one of the biggest, one of the most basic points in philosophy, that something that is false cannot be known because it's not true.
Where did you hear that?
And also you again implied your definition of knowledge.
Right.
Cannot be known. That's because you're using the JTB model of knowledge. We're not. V just clearly demonstrated to you that. So if you're assuming that something needs to be true to know it, then you are misapplying. You need to meet us somewhere where we can engage with you. Otherwise, you're talking past.
Also, that feels a little bit circular, doesn't it? Kind of like the ontological argument. I can conceive of a thing, therefore it exists.
V, can I ask, are you saying that someone can know that the Earth is flat?
Yes. If I guarantee you that I can find a flat earther who will tell me that they know that the Earth is flat.
That's a non sequitur. If they know, it must be true, right? I mean, at least under the classical but fine.
Right. Again, you did it again, Jim. We're not using the JTB model.
Okay, sure. Okay, so you're just saying
sure,
they're justified beliefs.
So
knowledge is just justified belief.
In practice, most of the time, that's kind of where we wind up. Yeah.
Okay, but then fine. What would you refer to as what we call justified true belief? What would you call that if not knowledge?
Unknowable.
Yeah. So you're taking an ontological claim and phrasing it as an epistemic claim. You don't have access to hardcore capital T truth.
Right.
Unless you're talking about something definitionally true, you are limited to your subjective experience. And because of that, we have to assign degrees of confidence, because to do otherwise is folly. To do otherwise is to assume that you have access to something that you don't.
Right. How
are you assigning degrees of confidence, Eric?
Through skepticism. Jim, how do you determine whether something you justifiably believe and you justifiably believe that is true? Like, where do you find that distinction? Say you believe two things. One of them is justified but not true. One of them is justified and true. How do you determine between the two?
Well, in the JTB model, right, someone cannot know something that is false. But under your knowledge definition, which
I think that's absolutely that's stupid. That is a stupid definition of knowledge.
Also, people are asking, what's the JTB model? For a long time, people defined knowledge as justified, true belief.
But that's fine. But Eric, I want to follow you up on this. You said that you had.
I kind of want to hear what you have to say about V's thing. I'm happy to couch my question.
Right. So we're gonna try not to go in a circle. Right. We're gonna try not to say I believe it. I think it's. I know it. Therefore, it's true. Therefore, I know it. Right. We don't want to do that because that's circular. So how do you determine what is true in you and and what you just are justified in knowing?
Okay, so that's an epistemological question, not an ontological one, right? Now,
it doesn't matter.
Well, actually, it does. Jim, pick. Are you making an epistemic question or an ontological? Is knowledge epistemic or ontological?
Ontological argument. I was making an ontological argument, but ultimately, what I'm saying is, in certain cases, I agree that we can't tell. Now, of course, that's not the case with everything. I'm an externalist, but even if we can't tell, after we can show that something is false, for example. You can't know it. Whereas in your model, something that is shown to be false can still be known.
Well, not if you include the word justified, right?
Right.
No, but justification
Justified takes over all the work that true needs to be doing here. You can justifiably know that something exists, and the true part doesn't even factor in. It would be nice if it was also true, and if you're justified sufficiently, then we can agree that it's true for the purposes of a conversation. But true isn't doing any work here.
Something in a world, but how can you justify anything in a world where God is deceiving you actively?
So the time to believe it is when there's evidence for it. If you take this approach on its face the way you're doing, you also need to be accepting that any other gods that could be deceiving you also exist.
Right. How do you know that Satan isn't deceiving you and Satan is God?
Or they're all working together. There's a cabal of hundreds of deities, thousands of deities. They're all working together to deceive you every day.
Why I would have to accept that. I'm not a global skeptic. You conceded you are. I'm not.
Oh, hold on a second. Whoa. So you get to play by rules that we don't get to. Is that right?
No, I gave you the question, and you told me that you have no way to tell. I have a way to tell. I'm an externalist.
Okay, hold on. We didn't say there's no way to tell.
No.
Again, you're using binary thinking. You're saying either thing is absolutely true and we know it, or it's absolutely not. It's not true, and that's not how it works. You have degrees of confidence in a thing. You do an experiment, and let's say it is exactly what you hypothesized. That doesn't mean it's that way every single time. You need to continue to conduct that experiment over and over and over to develop a higher and higher degree of confidence that it's going to be replicable. But apply that to daily life, and that's how we get there.
But Eric, do you understand, in a world where you're actively deceived, every part of your confidence is part of that deception?
Okay, again, Jim.
No degree of confidence.
Jim, where's your evidence that I'm being actively deceived?
Why is that relevant to the question?
Because, it's very relevant, Jim.
Because the time we're going to accept it is when there's evidence for it, not a moment beforehand.
I'm not telling you I don't think I'm not telling you to accept it. I'm telling you, if there is no way for you to tell a world in which you're actively being deceived by a God to belief in God, and and the other world where you actually belief in God, then you espouse global skepticism, and there are no degrees of confidence of anything.
Okay, right, Jim. If is doing
so how can you make
a ton of heavy lifting in that statement?
Yeah.
Not only that, you're trying to pigeonhole us, dude. We're complex people with nuanced opinions.
Why does it fucking matter? If you are right, and this is a universe where a God is actively deceiving every atheist and forcing them to not believe, then what does that change? What on earth is your point?
Changes is what statements you can make. For example, Eric's statements about experimentation and degrees of confidence are a complete bunk. It makes no sense, because any experiment you conduct and any confidence you gain from that is an active part of that deception. That's the point of being deceived. So
okay.
You still make any knowledge claims.
This is some weird upside down presuppositionalism.
No, this is straight up presuppositionalism.
Yeah, this is
It's not even upside down. You're presupposing that just because we can't have absolute knowledge, that we can't have any kind of confidence or knowledge whatsoever. You're trying to pin it. Jim, shut up and listen for just a second. Because I've been trying to answer you a couple of times and you've jumped in, and I've been very polite, wanting to make sure that I'm moving forward the conversation. But if I don't get to finish my sentence, then it's not going to contextually make any sense. Okay?
All right.
Cool. Skepticism is something that we use so that we can make sure that we don't get overconfident. Yes. But we have to use other things. We have to wind up using empiricism. We do have to use pragmatism. We do have to reach a point where, yes, okay, I have enough confidence that that this show's going to happen today, that I'm going to get ready for it. Right? Just because I can't have absolute certainty about a thing doesn't mean that everything is out the window. And if you try and pigeonhole us one more time saying that we are, was it global skeptics and that's it?
We've conceded global skepticism.
Then you can take the conversation elsewhere. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I just think that it's
cool. Bye.